Hi there, Indies and future Indies. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Katlyn Eggar, and I just want to say thanks for tuning in and being a part of this conversation. The forecast is out and the age of independence is here. This podcast is all about you. You're the agency owner, and it's about how you grow and scale your agency in the modern market. So that means cracking the code to high volume new business growth, winning in the digital world, and creating that thriving team culture where you can't wait to show up at work every day and just being really totally all in with what you're doing and enjoying every moment. So if you've been listening and this podcast is bringing you new ideas and sparking that entrepreneurial spirit, then I'd love it if you would click subscribe so that you can get that little notification on your phone every morning when the new content is out from the Age of Independence. I've been working with some really awesome guests that I cannot wait to introduce you to over the coming weeks. So make sure that you've subscribed. There's also a YouTube video playlist. Just DM me. I'll send you the link so that you can see the video version of this content. If you want to have a break from audio, that's always a fun way to switch it up. And finally, just like I love hearing from you guys. I love getting the DMs, and I want this podcast to cover the content that you want to hear about. So let me know what's top of mind for you, and we'll make sure that we work that into the episode schedule, because I know that as an agency owner, you wear a lot of hats and there's a lot of things that come across your plate every day. And I want to make sure that we're talking about all of that fun stuff. So with that said, I cannot wait for this episode today because you're about to hear from someone that I think is going to be a totally new introduction for you. I am so excited to invite a brand new guest to the show. And this is Amanda Mapp and her debut episode on the Age of Independence. Hi, Amanda. How are you today?
Hi, Caitlin. Thank you for having me. I love this podcast. It's my favorite thing to listen to on the Stairmaster.
I love the multitasking. You're always so good about knocking out two birds with one stone, Amanda. So the reason I'm so excited about this episode is because Amanda and I work together at Quantum, and we work together in the education department. So today, this episode is all about hearing what the world is like for Katlyn and Amanda in the insurance education world. And we're going to be pulling the curtain back a little bit, giving you guys a little bit of the behind the scenes and things that we work on every day, the challenges that we've faced over the past couple months, things that we've had to learn the hard way. So you guys are going to get to learn all that nitty gritty today. But before we dive into all that good stuff, I think that we should give the audience a little bit of a chance to get to know you, Amanda. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started in insurance like the day I graduated college with my bachelor's. I went for communications, and I was dead set on being a graphic designer. I was going to be an artist, and my dad was like, "Nope, you're gonna make some money." And so he was like, "I heard on the radio that Geico's hiring. You need to call them or, go online, whatever, figure it out, but get yourself a job." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I literally don't know anything about insurance." And here I am, 8 years later, I'm still in the biz, and I
That's so
absolutely
cool.
love it. I've worked in just about every department you can imagine: sales, service, auto damage. And then most recently, over the past few years, I've been working in training and development because that is what I am most passionate about. I went to grad school for my degree in organizational development, and it's just something that I'm really passionate about.
And isn't that crazy how insurance just kind of happens upon you when you least expect it? It's so not that career that I know I wasn't thinking about it when I was in college. And I'm so grateful that it landed in my lap. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this training and education world that we're in, because there's so many people out there that just don't know that insurance is right around the corner and what it could bring into their life.
Absolutely. And even within insurance, there's so many different paths and routes that you can take. And training is one of those routes. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, you still work in insurance, you work in insurance. And I'm like, I do work with insurance, but I actually work in training and development. And I'm just lucky that insurance is the vehicle that I'm driving to get to do what I want to do.
Well, and you have found a really cool part of the insurance world to land. So tell us a little bit about what your daily life looks like and where you're calling us from today, Amanda.
Oh, so this is a virtual background, as you can see with the whooshies, because I actually live full time in an RV, and I travel around with my fiance and our dog and our 2 cats. And we are currently in Florida. We're chasing the good weather. We were, out in Texas for a while, as you know, and I love Texas. I lived there for a long time, and there's something very homey about Texas for me, but I just needed to be by a beach because I just miss the good weather. And, I'm thankful that the things that I get to do and the people that I get to work with, I can do from, adventuring on the road, and I'm still able to have a big impact. And that's part of why I love that training and development is going so digital lately, because we can kind of still, have this independence while we're getting our content out there.
That's so cool. No pun intended. The Age of Independence. I love it. And for an East Coast girl, I love Texas. I love me some Texas, but Texas beaches just are not, they're just
the same.
Not East Coast beaches. So
I'm from the East Coast. Yeah. So yeah.
So I think we should give the guests a little bit of a chance to get to know you. So I didn't tell you this, but I prepared a couple pop quiz questions.
Oh, okay.
That's what educators do, right? So pop quiz. Okay, so Amanda.
Yes.
The Office or Parks and Rec?
The Office, 100%.
100%? It's addicting, isn't it?
Bears beat Battlestar Galactica. I am all in with The Office. I love that. Have some deep track quotes too.
I'm not, and I'm trying to remember the superstitious one. I'm not
superstitious, but I am
superstitious. I'm just a little stitious. So we talked about East Coast beaches. Miami Beach or Virginia Beach?
Ooh, that's a hard one because I love the Florida weather and the beautiful scenery at the beach, but I'll have to go with Virginia Beach because that is my home and my family and my friends are all there. So I have to go with the 757 in this instance.
It's such a hard choice. Okay. And I think I know what you're going to say to the next one. So Texas barbecue or Chinese hot pot?
Oh my gosh, Chinese hot pot, baby. It's so good.
You're welcome. So it wasn't long ago that Amanda hadn't tried Chinese hot pot, and Justin and I introduced her, and it was pretty life-changing, wasn't it?
It was really life-changing. I may or may not have ordered a hot pot set online. I'm just afraid to use it and then it won't be the same.
You'll have to have a get together, and it's so good, y'all. Pull out your Yelp app right now. Don't lose the podcast. Pause the podcast, pull out the Yelp app and find some really good Chinese hot pot near you as soon as possible. It is life-changing. It's so good. And I love it because it's a really slow meal. Like you don't just go in and order something and eat and leave. It's like a really great time to talk and hang out and try. It's the experience. So awesome. So walk us back through memory lane just a little bit, because you mentioned how you landed in the insurance world. You found this really great corner of the insurance world where you're really getting to do some pretty cool big things. And I want to hear a little bit more about what it was like for you from your perspective in some of those early roles. You mentioned claims, service, sales, and some of the management positions that you've been in. What was it like for you before you branched over into the instructional design aspect of insurance?
Gotcha. So I actually started in a leadership development program. So everything that I did was through this program, but a big part of that program, which is actually super important, I'm sure we'll touch on it, but a big part of that program is making sure that there's real life experiences throughout the program. So I actually had to take calls. I had to get on the phone with clients. I had to learn the system inside and out, and learn about the underwriting process, and just different things that are encompassed in insurance. And when I was on the phones, that was really, I think about it in two different ways now, because on the one end, it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever done, because, when you're on the phones all day, I always say it, like, to this day, our frontline associates are our most valuable assets. The job that they do is not an easy one. And I did it for a long time. But on the other side, it was very rewarding, because I was able to have an impact on every client that I talked to. And maybe I wasn't their favorite person that they spoke to that day, but I knew that they were more protected when they got off the line with me, or that they understood something about their policy a little bit better, or that they were set up for a claim in the best possible situation that they could have been in. So it was, when I think about that very first role, the very first day that I was on the phones, and like the nerves that I felt, just talking to clients and knowing that I had this like huge responsibility, it was heavy, but it's the good kind of heavy, because then it's like, oh, that can have such a reward, high risk, high reward.
I,
Um,
I think it's so important to remember what we felt like when we were new on the phones for the first time,
mhm.
because every time we hire someone new into the agency, they're going through those same emotions, and they may even have some insurance experience, but it's still a new role for them. And so to me, it's one of the first things that we have to think about when we're working on building an education program, is that human aspect of it. So what were some of the emotions that you remember running through your head at that time?
So I still think about my onboarding experience quite a bit, because it was a good portion of my insurance history, basically. But there's one instance that kind of summarizes exactly kind of how I was feeling throughout that process. The very first call that I ever took, it was just a simple billing call. The client was calling in to make a payment. I I was partnered up with somebody who was listening in on my calls. And I clicked the button to apply the payment, and I said, "Thank you for calling and have a lovely day." And the girl that I was partnered with started crying. I was like, "Why
Oh,
are you crying?" And she's like, "You did such a good job. I'm so nervous." I was really like feeling that level of nerves too. And if I hadn't gone first, I probably would have been in the same situation. And
yeah.
when I think back about my training history, I always think about that moment, because I'm like, it can be really nerve wracking, and you can feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And that's why what we do in training is so important, because, confidence comes from competence, and feeling like that you can do what it is that you're there to do.
It takes so much confidence for our frontline associates to be able to pull off what they do in their sales and service roles every day. It takes a lot of guts. It's not easy. And it takes a gritty, gutsy person that cares about people and can wing it sometimes. And sometimes it is just not easy to wing it. And that's, that's why we want to prepare them and make sure that they have the best resources and tools. So take us from there. So you continued to grow in the company through different roles. And so what other experiences did you have in your insurance background that stand out to you?
So I went from being, even though I was in the leadership development program, I still had to apply and earn the supervisory position. And I remember working really hard for that. But what was more important to me was I was assigned a team before I actually applied for supervisor. I was assigned a team of only 3 associates, and my job was to kind of measure their progress and coach them to improving their numbers, their referral numbers, their survey results, their call times, all of that. And what I remember when I was presenting my results, there was that's not what stood out to me at the end of the day. It was the impact that I had on the associates. And, some of these people were, going through a lot in their lives. Somebody's mother had passed away. And, I remember her being like so thankful to have somebody there to talk to. And just realizing that the work that we're doing is not just at the end of the day about the numbers, but it's about the impact that we're having on the people that we're working with day in and day out.
So you mentioned you worked in several different departments. So what were some of your favorite projects that you worked on?
Oh gosh, I would have to say when I was doing auto damage, I was a management development program coordinator for the auto damage department. So I wasn't actually estimating any claims, but I got to go out and observe people as they were doing it. And I remember just getting to learn about, like the hand size and how much a hand size crack could potentially cost. And I was like,
Wow.
man, it is expensive. Like this big of a crack could be like $500 depending on the type of vehicle. And I just it gave me such a better understanding of how, like, what insurance is actually for, and like what people use it for at the end of the day. Like, what are they actually paying for? It's that claims experience. And so it made me a better salesperson. It made me a better customer service representative. It made me a better underwriter, because I was really trying to make sure that people that from on were really set up for success in the event of a claim. But also it was just really fun because I got to travel all over the country and like check out, cat claims and see hail damage and like learn how to differentiate between real hail damage and like a hammer. It was really cool.
That's so funny. And I think that that makes me think how important the claims process is to the education journey for our new team members, especially in a sales role
Mhm.
where they're working with a client on the very beginning journey with your agency, with your company, and they may not be the person that takes the claims calls or connects them to the company's claims team, or ever gets to see that policy come to life for that person in a tangible, real way. And so we'll talk with you guys a little bit through this episode about some of the things that we've been working on at Quantum. And that's one of the things that comes to mind for me, was that we found that our program really needed to orient a new team member with the claims team and what claims looks like for a client, and what a salesperson's role is in the claims experience, so that they could kind of picture that full circle of what a client goes through in their insurance life. So
Yeah,
that's been fun to work on. Mhm.
I've realized that sometimes when people are starting a new training program, they hone in on the one thing that they know that their clients or that their associate's going to be doing, and that's the only thing they train on. But in insurance especially, it's so important to have a holistic view of what a policy journey looks like for a client from start to claim, basically from the time they start their policy to the time they have to use it. Having that knowledge, especially if you're brand new coming into insurance, as many of you will be hiring new associates, that is such an important process to learn about. Some people are going to be fresh out of school and maybe they've never experienced this before themselves. And a big part of, adults learning is having that experience. And so if they don't have that experience, we have to find a way to develop it for them or walk them through that process, even if it's not something they've experienced in their own personal lives.
And we want to make it as easy as possible for them to become really passionate about what they're doing. And they need to feel like there's a greater purpose in their day-to-day tasks if they're going to find a way to come to really enjoy it and see it as something that they love doing, or they're looking forward to coming to work every day so that they can help people. And I think that sharing the claim stories, the real life examples of what's happening to your clients with the sales team, is one of the ways that we can do that. And so that's just something that we've kind of learned along the way that's helping to make the onboarding experience better and better, is shortening the gap between the sales team and the claims team in the office. So, Amanda, I'd love to give you a little bit of a chance to just brag on yourself for a second. Could you maybe share with us some of the accomplishments you're most proud of, or projects you've worked on that you're most proud of, so we can hear about some of those things too?
Oh, a little humble brag
Yeah.
moment. Um, so I I would have to say definitely one of the things I'm most proud of is having gone back to school after I got my bachelor's. I took years off, and so the idea of going back to school was really daunting for me. But I'm very passionate, like I said, about training and development, and I wanted to be good at what I do. So I went back to school. I got my master's in organizational development and leadership, and from there, I was able to put myself in a more competitive position to get hired into some management development roles. And in those roles, I was able to learn more about the company. I was able to learn more about my leadership style. And I was able to learn about how much training can influence the role somebody takes in their career, the direction that they go. One of I guess, the most proud moments I had as a trainer would have been when I was working for basically the leadership development team for the attorneys, the claims attorneys. And, talk about a group of people who don't necessarily want to be talked to or trained about anything, is a group of very seasoned attorneys. And when I say a group, I mean like over 200 attorneys
Oh my
at a
gosh.
conference in Florida. And they had been all week, they had been talked to about legal matters and claims issues. And somebody stood at a podium and talked at them for days and days and days. And I come in on Thursday and I put my little earpiece in and I'm walking the crowd and I'm asking them questions. And I have to say, I was so nervous about that event because I was like, this is a huge crowd of really intimidating people to train. And at the end of that training session, like a ton of attorneys come up to me and they're like, thank you, because we needed that. This is the type of training we were looking for. I feel
Wow.
like we got so much out of that. We appreciate you coming. I had several of them reach out to me and ask me for help with their associate attorneys, and it was just a really positive experience for me. And I felt like it was just a good way to be like, oh, I can do it now. I finally know what I'm doing, and I've gotten some really positive feedback from it.
That is so cool. And that would be really daunting. So there's some crowds where, they may or may not want to be at the conference or the event that they're at. And I think some of those are the most challenging ones. So kudos to you for rocking it. And that's really neat. And I think it just goes to show that leadership development is such a huge need for anyone in the business world who's working with other associates, with people that report to them, and just and even attorneys, they're growing a business, they're growing their firm. And we see it on the insurance side also, just as a huge hot topic that I know is top of mind for all of our agency owners. And um, one of the things that's been really fun to learn from you in our times together, working together at Quantum, have been your perspective on leadership development and how we can be better at helping our team members learn and grow personally and professionally, because we want to see them thrive.
Yeah, I think that, thank you, by the way,
Mhm.
education and leadership, they truly go hand in hand because it's a process where you're always learning and you're always growing. Another huge, I think, accomplishment that we did together was build a training platform from the ground up, from scratch during COVID-19. And we're all working from home and everything is being, filmed back when we're still working out the kinks in Zoom and like trying to figure out how to do everything still. And I feel like that's part of why I love training and development so much, is because it's always growing and changing. And there's always things that you have to work through or figure out. And the way that people absorb training is always changing. And, there's people getting training on TikTok now for different things, like that's mind blowing to me. I'm still trying to figure out how to use the app.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I know you have a team member spotlight interview out at Quantum. We have a team member that sold $189,000 in a month, and super fun team member, and they're early on in their career. And they love absorbing content on TikTok. And so when I was in the agency and I was like getting to know them and shaking their hand and like, hey, give me your feedback on Quantum University, they said, well, you need to be on TikTok. And I was like, I don't want to be on TikTok. And he was like, no, really. And I think it's so important to, look at, try to look at training from our associates' perspective in their eyes and what's fun for them. So there's definitely something I learned from that. But the other piece of that feedback was like, hey, adults, when they show up at work and you tell them they're going to have a training program, they don't want to like feel like they're back in college again. Like they don't want to feel like, oh, school. Right. And so I think that that's been something we've been working on this year is how do we make Quantum University a really fun experience for people that are onboarding where they feel like it's not wasting their time. It doesn't have any extra fluff in there, but that it's effective and that they're learning and that they're growing. So, so it was really good feedback and just kind of a funny story. I haven't contributed to the TikTok world at all yet. So I can't.
I
No
can't
props
figure out
there.
the algorithm. I'm always like, I just end up with like videos of dogs, and I'm like, that's okay for me.
So this past year, we've worked on creating from the ground up a formal education program at Quantum. And so that means everything from selecting and building out an LMS, a learning management system, to sketching out, outlining, creating the content, and then determining how we'll bring it to life so that we have more than just videos for the team. And so it's really been about trying to create a well-rounded, holistic program that takes a new sales employee or a new customer service specialist in an agency and helps walk them through from day one through their entire onboarding experience. And so we've had some huge wins with that. It's been really pivotal for Quantum and our agency's ability to onboard new team members into new roles. But we've learned so much, and there's been some stuff we've just had to learn the hard way. So that's really some of the things that we want to share with you today, agency owners, because what I'm hearing from you when you guys reach out and we're chatting and we're having Zoom meet and greets, you guys are telling me that there's this big gap in the training resources that you have available in your agency. And so if there's anything that Amanda and I have learned this year or have been working on that we can share with you to make that process a little bit easier in your agency, I know how important your people are to you. Your team members, it's so hard to find and attract top talent. And then you want to have the best program for them. You want them to be able to put down roots and build that career of their dreams and stay with your agency for a really long time. But it's not easy. You're already wearing a ton of hats in your agency. You're already your chief marketing officer, your CFO, your CTO. And so I know what it's like to be in that environment where you can't grow without bringing on that next rock star salesperson, but you're trying to take someone who has that potential and just doesn't have that experience and get them from point A to point Z, and you're trying to do it in a really short period of time because you've just invested in this person's their payroll, their compensation, and there's that huge initial financial investment to bringing someone new on board. And so you have this challenge where it's like, how do I take this new person in my agency and shorten their learning curve so that they can start generating revenue for the agency and being profitable in that role so that we can continue to grow as a business. And it's no easy task. When I think back to my agency owner days in the captive world, and I remember having an office of about 8 to 10 people, and every time I would bring a new employee on board, it felt like I was having to recreate the wheel all over again. And there's only so many times that you can show the auto home quoting platform to someone before it starts to drive you crazy a little bit. And so I think that's when I first started thinking about this concept of using video to record some of those things that we do every day so that it didn't fall on my shoulders to have to be the person that explained everything from how to use the Ricochet phone system to how to quote in the carriers. And I think about how I felt trying to figure out like, well, what should I train them on first? and they're telling me they want to learn this product knowledge in the carriers, but I also need to teach them the sales conversation, but I also have to take this customer service phone call over here. And it's a lot to try to figure out. And so, I've been there, and I know the pressure of trying to get a new employee up and running in what feels like a really short amount of time. So I think it's a really big pain point for agency owners.
I think that the good news is, though, Caitlin, that there's a lot of steps that can be taken in small, bite-sized ways to get to the ultimate goal of having a formalized training process or program. And a lot of those can happen during, your first, months to your first year to get prepared and set up until you're in a position where you can really invest time and energy and money into a formal training program. There's a lot of little steps that can be taken in between then. Looking at your needs assessment and figuring out what is it that I actually need my people to know at the end of this training session and why, and
That's huge.
organizing, how you want to actually deliver the training. What vehicle do you want to use for that? Do you want to have managers involved or trainers involved, or do you want it to be digital? What is it going to look like? What is the budget going to look like? There's a lot that can be just evaluated and looked at before you actually bite the bullet and go into actually the development or implementation phase.
And I think there's a huge opportunity to start working on building a training program in your agency that doesn't have to start with a huge budget. There's so much you can do through planning out and organizing information that will take your time and your effort, which is a huge investment, but isn't super duper costly. So I think there's certainly great ways to get started because you're already a wealth of knowledge. That information that you have in your head, all those years and years and years of experience, it's about getting that out and creating something that your team members can replicate. You already have so much knowledge and experience and content, but you can plan it and organize it and think through it without having to spend a ton of extra money as your starting step. So it makes me think about videos because it's free to, or almost free to, hop on Zoom and record videos. And I know a lot of agency owners right now are using software like Loom or Zoom Video or Microsoft Streams to start creating video content for their team. So if you've already started working on that, I applaud you because I think it's a really great thing in your agency. So Amanda, I want to pick your brain on video real quick because this has been a huge resource for us at Quantum, but it also has its own pitfalls. In Quantum University, in our LMS, we have hundreds of videos that new associates can use to walk them through their onboarding journey. And that's been huge because it really takes the weight off of the trainer's shoulders to have to teach every single little nitty gritty thing. It helps make sure we have a uniform message. But what are some of the pitfalls that we need to be aware of? There's so many people trying to use video right now because they have employees working remotely. And I see this being kind of like a double-edged sword.
Yeah. So one of the, I guess you could say, benefits of videos is that videos have the ability to make something more autonomous for the learner. And that's huge for adult learners because they want to be able to go through training on their own time, at their own pace, using their phone or their computer, their iPad, whatever the case may be. They want to be able to do it independently. And so that's a benefit of having something that's digital, like a video that you can send out. There are tons of, benefits to having a digital platform. The downside of it is that it isn't always as collaborative as you might want your training to be, which is why when you have your folks with you or you're on the phone with them, it's so important to have training conversations, even when it's not necessarily the primary reason that you've gathered that day, or you don't have a ton of time for it. It's important to still like ask a question about the video that they watched, or ask them what their biggest takeaway was from it, because that's how you make things like that more collaborative. I would say less than the medium that you're using, which is a video, is more important the content that's in the video, and like how is it organized, and does it include any sort of interactive element at all, even if it's somebody on the video telling the associate to write something down, where there's not going to be, a ton of follow up on it right then and there, but is there some sort of interaction in it? There's like this adult learning theory concept called Andragogy. And basically that just is saying that there's a difference between how students, like children, learn and how adults learn. And one of the biggest things is being able to do it independently and having it be task oriented. So something that is relevant to what they're going to be doing on their job. And so the content of the video is what really, really matters. And there's a ton of ways that you can make sure that the videos are pulling in, clips from what they're actually going to be doing in their daily jobs, or screenshots from the systems that they're going to be using. It's all about that relevance. And then the third final thing is the what's in it for me, and that has to be mentioned in the video. Adult learners have to be invested in whatever it is that they're learning, or it's not as effective for them. So the moment we say, at the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to put up some better numbers, or you're going to be able to get your client to understand the umbrella policy and sell it to them. They need to know what they're going to be able to do at the end of this to be invested in whatever that material is coming at them.
Otherwise, it just feels like busy work, and
Mhm.
it's no fun. So one of the things that we do is we take the content, and when we're recording it, we break it down into short segments so that the associate is working through a series of maybe 10 2 or 3 minute long videos instead of one long 30-minute video, because you get that sense of accomplishment every time you get to push that next button and you finish something and you can see the progress on the screen. So that's something that we found has worked really well for our team, and it allows you to break it up a little bit. I think videos get a bad rap because we know that videos aren't the be all end all. We know that we can't just take a new sales professional and sit them down in a corner with a laptop and a video for several weeks and have it work. They won't walk out of that experience super pumped about your agency, understanding the mission and the values of your company, or having been able to like practice new skills and learn in a group setting. So videos can only take us so far, but I found that they can be such a great tool for making sure that there's a uniform message amongst your team, because you may want to get to the point where you as the agency owner aren't the person who's responsible for all of the training and education that goes on in your agency. You're probably going to be leveraging some of your sales leaders, some of your supervisors, your office manager, people who work alongside you that are going to be closely helping these new sales associates learn their new role. And there's probably some things that are really important to you that you want every single new insurance professional in your agency to embrace. And if you're able to incorporate that into the video content, it makes it easier for the other people in your office to carry that torch forward, because it means that while they're facilitating this experience, they're not having to recreate the wheel, and they know what the primary main messages are that you wanted to get through. So maybe one of those things for you is like, what role does price play in the insurance conversation? Maybe it's really important to you that your new sales professionals know how to walk a client through how to best protect their family from life's risks. And you believe that price plays a role in that, but that it's not the be all end all, and that we're not just here to shop rate. If that's something that's really, really important to you, then having it in the videos so that the other sales leaders and trainers in your agency are embracing that and also carrying that message forward really helps. And it doesn't replace how powerful it is for you to show up in the agency and do a team meeting or a huddle or a workshop hands-on with people and say those things out loud in person. But I think it does really help the team hear those things more than just once, and it starts to become ingrained in the team culture.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the common pitfalls in training and development is that things become flavor of the month or one and done. You see it, you hear it, you're done with it after that, and it's never heard of again. And I think it's really important to make sure that it's a message that is really important to your organization. It's part of your vision, it's part of your mission. Everything that you should, include in your training and development is going to be helping you move towards your organizational goals. And your team has to see where they fit into those goals in order to really buy into that training and execute the things that you want them to execute. And a big part of reinforcing that is regularly talking about the items that they've heard in a video or that they learned while reading a paragraph on a screen. It's all about talking about it and reinforcing it. Whenever you see it done right, positive reinforcement over and over and over and over and over again.
That's huge. And I was just speaking with an agency owner last week who has an amazing agency. Like, they've got the culture down, they've got the purpose down, they have the mission, they have the values. They're so involved in their local community. And they shared with me that one of the things that they struggle with is it's like someone new will come on board and they don't always last. And so I just encourage that person that, like, hey, that's a common problem. That doesn't mean that, don't feel down on yourself. Like, that's a huge, big thing in the insurance world. But Amanda, what are some of the reasons that new insurance sales professionals dip their toes in the water and then they end up deciding, like, hey, this isn't for me? Because I think we need to be able to crack the code to that problem if we want to be able to grow our agencies, because it's so costly to bring a new person on board. We really need to have a high success rate.
Oh yeah. There's obviously there's a couple of reasons that people turn over, especially in those early days. One, insurance is not an easy topic to learn or to feel like you're an expert in. And people are not comfortable doing things they don't feel like they're good at. And a big part of feeling like you're good at something is that positive reinforcement. So being told, like, hey, it's okay that you don't have all the answers up front, because we're going to learn about that. And it's something you're going to learn over time. I was a supervisor at one point, and I'm still like learning new things about the products that, my company offered. And I was like, oh my gosh, like if I had known all this on day one. But insurance is so comprehensive and such a huge topic that it's really hard to know everything all at once, right? But almost, a good majority of employees will stay at least 3 years if they have a positive onboarding experience. And that's at least 3 years. They'll stay longer than that with culture and like positive reinforcement and like a good work environment, and being, compensated fairly. All of those things make somebody stay longer, but their onboarding experience has an impact for the first 3 years of their career.
Wow.
And that's from the Society of Human Resources. That said that it's one of the number one reasons people leave is the onboarding experience that they have. And so your training and your onboarding in those first few weeks and those first few months have such a huge impact on employee retention. And your training, it doesn't mean you have to have a formal training process in place from day one. It just means you have to be fostering a culture of training and development from day one, and fostering a culture of learning and acceptance and growth, where questions are allowed and people can openly speak about not understanding something fully without getting penalized. And there's this air of acceptance, and it just allows people to feel like it's okay if I don't know everything up front, but it also makes them want to work harder to know it. And people feel more invested in that, and they're like, oh, I'm going to really commit and I'm going to become the best person I can possibly be to get a referral or to get a policy on the books. Like, I want to be the go-to person for this. And that environment makes people feel more motivated. It's intrinsic motivation.
Man, so it sounds like the onboarding experience is so crucial that we can't get it wrong. So, like, what are some of the things that agency owners just cannot get wrong?
I would say
Mhm.
the biggest thing is forgetting about training after it's happened, like not going through it at all. Number two, rushing people through their training process, saying things like, just for example, get these videos done and we're going to come back, I'll show you how to do it on the actual computer later. Training has to be part of that process. And it has to show that you are, committed to them being allowed to learn something, and have practice time so that they can make errors. There has to be some role plays involved, because when people feel like this is a safe space for me to mess up and it's not on the line with a real client, then they improve their performance. And there has to be expectation set for them. Like, what is my job role? What is it that I'm expected to do day in and day out? What are my results supposed to be? Having those expectations really help to make somebody feel like they are set up for success, or they at least know the things that they're going to need to set them up for success. We have to put the tools and resources in place to get them there, but it doesn't mean that, right off the bat on day one, they have to have a formal training process. It's just that we have to have some of those basic things in place for them. But most importantly, we have to be available to them and there with, answering their questions or having them have a go-to partner that they can talk to. Really just letting them know that we're there for them and they're not thrown out to the wolves to learn this on their own and then come back in and we expect them to sell, $100,000 a month.
When you said thrown to the wolves, so that's the phrase that's top of mind for me, because every job I've ever had, I felt like part of the training process was intentionally just like throwing the employees to the wolves, and they're like, sink or swim. If you have the guts, you'll figure it out. And there's definitely so much to be said for like just ripping the Band-Aid, getting on the phones. But confidence is such a big part of what we do in insurance sales and insurance advising with clients, that we have to like figure out where that's going to come in. So, all right. So I have a tough question for you, Amanda. How soon is too soon to get the employee on the phone? I think this is like the big question for agency owners. They're like, some are like, oh, I throw them on the phones day one. And then you have companies where there might be like a 6-week training program before the associates get on the phone. And I think a lot of agency owners think, wow, there's no way I could pay someone's payroll for 6 weeks before they pick up a phone in my agency. So when should they pick up that phone and start talking to clients?
So you remember, skills have to be built upon. And one of a basic skill that we forget that people don't always know when they come in fresh to a new organization is how to use the phone systems. And getting people on the phones and practicing that, even if they're just calling each other, and practicing how they would use their phone system, maybe role playing the opening of a call or how it would sound when they transferred it, is so important. Getting on the phones quick to me is very effective, because it's experiential. It's not throwing them to the wolves. We've given them scripts that they need, or we've given them the basics, the basics of how they would do this, the technical skills that they would need to be able to do it. We've shown them how to do it. We're in a safe space where they can practice first. But at the end of the day, experiential learning is how adults learn, right? It has to be task oriented. They have to do something. It's haptics, right? They have to put their hands on it, their fingers on it. They have to touch it and see it and smell it and like figure out how to make this work for me. And they can't do that if we don't put them on the phones. What happens is actually when we try not to build on skills and instead we say, you're going on the phones now and you have to do this all at once, like sell a whole policy or like service a whole policy all at once, your very first time on the phones. And then we run into issues like people not getting verified or people not answering the phone correctly or people hanging up on somebody while trying to put them on hold, because they haven't had this time to build on each of the skills that they're going to need to effectively handle their clients.
And it takes time to build on those skills. So the way someone sounds on the phones day one is going to sound completely different from week 3 and week 6. So I can't stress how helpful it's been for us to have tools that we can use in the agency to listen to those conversations back on recorded phone calls. So we have the recorded calls where we can listen with our new sales professional or our new customer service specialist and hear the conversation together and discuss it and talk about what worked and what was going on, what they would do differently next time. And we have a system called Voice Ops that uses machine learning to provide a transcript for the call where we can click to certain behaviors. Maybe I'm just focusing on the close of the sale with this new person. So maybe they're in like week 4 and we're working on that assumptive close. I can skip forward to where they gave the prices in the conversation and we can look at it and hear it together. And so I think that combination of being able to see it and hear it with the person who's working through the program with you is one of the things we get a lot of. Really, when someone says like, hey, here's where the light bulb went off for me, a lot of times it's when their sales leader sat down with them to review calls. And so I just can't stress how helpful that's been for us.
It's like learning how to drive. You don't start on the highway. You go to a school parking lot and you drive around cones, and you have somebody sitting next to you telling you slow down, or that's the wrong pedal, Amanda. You're going to need to use the other one to brake. You have somebody there giving you regular feedback, and that is how we learn best. And so training is the same way. Like, I couldn't tell you anything from my driver's ed course, but I can tell you I remember sitting down with my mom in the school parking lot and learning how to accelerate to 25 miles per hour without feeling like I was going to crash into something and die. um, and then you build on those skills from there. And it doesn't mean you're never going to have to go back to the basics. When I went to Italy, for example, I had to suddenly be in a stick shift car, and I was like, oh man, this is a whole new skill. Also, there's like no such thing as like stoplights, and so it was just a whole new way of learning. And I just think about that when in the insurance industry, there's always going to be different experiences that come on your line, or situations that come on your line that you've not dealt with before. And so you go back to that first level of learning where you're like, okay, now this is a skill. I have to put all my attention and focus into it. I can't text and drive on this one. I have to like just focus on this one thing that I'm dealing with. And then you'll get better with that the more that you do it, and the more feedback that you have. It's all the same process. Every time you learn a new skill in insurance, it's like driving a car.
So I feel like there's so many things for a new team member to learn. It's like, where do you even start, right? It's like this person, even if they're not brand new to insurance, they have all these new carriers that they have to learn. They have all new phone systems they have to learn. So you have the technology aspect of it. You have the carrier and the product knowledge aspect of it. You have the quality assurance pieces of like making sure they knew to ask, do you have any tenants on the property? And then at that point, you haven't even touched the sales conversation. And so I know what it's like to be there, where it's like, I need this person to be a rock star salesperson, but there's so much to learn. I don't even know where to begin and how to like layer it and create this like guided experience. So, um, what one of the things that I think puts a little speed bump in that is that what I found with new associates is that if you ask the new person what they want to learn, what are they going to say 100% of the time? They're going to say, I need to learn the carriers and the quoting systems, right? Like that's what their thing is. Like, how do I use the rater? How do I know the carriers? How do I use the quoting system? So Amanda, how do we balance that, what the team members telling us they need, with what we know they need, which is like, how do you talk to clients about insurance and create this sales conversation? How do we empower the client to make a buying decision today? So how do we bridge the gap between what's top of mind for the new team member and where we want them to grow to?
Work it into how they're going to be expected to handle the calls. So what I mean by that is they can't be two separate things. Talking to the client can't be one thing, and executing on the technical side of it can't be a separate thing. We have to incorporate those two, with the priority always being the client, right? Everything should be client facing. So instead of saying, learn this first and then we'll teach you how to, operate the system, we have to say, I'm going to teach you how to effectively place your client on a hold, or effectively set the expectation with your client that you're going to be working. Now let's learn what you're going to do during that break. Here's the technical skills that you need to be able to go through the rater, or here's all of the things that you need to collect on an insurance application. Let me show you how you can have this conversation with your client. Key along with me as we go through this, with the emphasis being on the conversation that you're having with your client. Because what's more important than anything is that you'll always figure out how to do something. There will always be somebody there that can help you figure out, what do I need to do to actually make this happen? But you can't take back the conversation portion with your client. So that is a skill that if you learn it the wrong way, it's really hard to break out of that. So it has to be learned at the beginning along with everything else, or it can fall to the wayside and people will just focus on the technical side. And that's how we end up with really transactional sounding phone calls. And we want the experience to be something for the client that they can't get online. And that's where the conversation components come in. So I say just build it into the training. Here's how you're going to use the rater, for example. Let's talk through how that's going to sound on the phone.
The rater one's a big one. And gosh, I wish we had time today to unravel how you train a new sales professional on that rater conversation, because that's such a key part to unlocking that sales conversation with the client. So we didn't even get to everything on my list today yet, Amanda. So Indies, like, send me a DM. Let me know what topics about training and education in your insurance agency you want to hear about next. We haven't talked about rater training. We haven't talked about tracking and measuring and having benchmarks, how to gamify it for your team. So like, let me know what you want to hear about, and maybe we'll be able to talk Amanda into joining us again in the future to dive more into all that fun stuff. Man, we love what we do. This is so fun, and we love talking to you guys about these things. So Amanda, where can people like find you on social media? Are you a TikToker, Instagrammer, Clubhouser, Texter, LinkedIn?
I am on Clubhouse at Amanda Mapp. It's super easy. It's just my first and last name. Same for LinkedIn. And that's going to be the best place to find me. I don't really do Facebook a whole lot, so I am new on TikTok, but it's just videos of my dog. So.
You have such a cute dog. So thanks for joining us on the Age of Independence today, Amanda. This is such a crucial thing for agents. Their team members are everything to them. And it's a really big pain point, just trying to figure out how we create this amazing career experience for someone, knowing how much insurance has changed our lives. And so thanks for joining us just to help us spark some new ideas and explore some of these concepts about how we can use this as a year to just make that onboarding experience better and better and better. So agents, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't had a chance to click subscribe yet, make sure that you click so that you can get those little notifications each week as we have new content coming up. And thanks for listening to the show and being a big part of this conversation. We are super excited to get to know you and hear about the things going on in your agency. So agents, this is Katlyn Eggar and Amanda Mapp signing off until next time. Bye.
Bye.